I still don't trust him, Agent Carter muttered, leaning closer to the edge of the table. His voice was low, sharp, like the edge of a blade ready to cut through the silence. Agent Monroe raised an eyebrow, her fingers drumming lightly against her coffee mug. Trust isn't part of the job description, Carter. Observing, analyzing, and acting. Those are. Don't play semantics with me, Carter snapped, his frustration evident. You saw how he slipped through the debrief. Every question we threw at him, he had an answer. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Or maybe, Monroe countered, her tone calm but firm, he's just that good at his job. Carter leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. Good at his job? Or good at pretending to be one of us? The room fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead lights. The tension between them was palpable, a reflection of the larger unease permeating the agency since the rumors started. You're letting paranoia cloud your judgment, Monroe said finally, her voice softer now. We're trained to see patterns, Carter, but sometimes we see them where they don't exist. Carter's jaw tightened. And sometimes, Monroe, the pattern is real. Before she could respond, the door to the briefing room swung open. Director Hayes stepped in, his presence commanding immediate attention. His sharp eyes scanned the room, settling briefly on each of them before he spoke. We've got a new lead, Hayes said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Our source inside the network has flagged an anomaly. Monroe straightened in her seat. An anomaly? Hayes nodded. A series of communications intercepted over the past month. They're encrypted, but the structure matches known alien patterns. Carter's eyes narrowed. And you think our guy? We're not jumping to conclusions, Hayes interrupted, his gaze sharp. But we can't afford to ignore the possibility. That's why you two are going to dig deeper. Monroe glanced at Carter, her expression unreadable. What's the plan? Surveillance, Hayes said simply. Close and constant. If he's hiding something, we'll find it. Carter smirked, a hint of satisfaction in his expression. Finally, Monroe shot him a warning look before turning back to Hayes. Understood. Hayes nodded once and left the room, the door clicking shut behind him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. You're too eager, Monroe said finally, her tone cautious. That's how mistakes are made. And you're too cautious, Carter retorted. That's how threats slip through the cracks. Monroe sighed, standing up and gathering her things. Let's just do our jobs, Carter. If there's something to find, we'll find it. As she walked out, Carter stayed behind, staring at the empty coffee mug in front of him. His mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late, that the alien agent wasn't just hiding in plain sight. They were already pulling the strings. The following day, Monroe and Carter began their assignment. The target, a mid-level analyst named Jacob Trent, had been with the agency for 3 years. On paper, he was flawless, a decorated background in cryptography, glowing performance reviews, and a spotless personal life. Too spotless, Carter thought. He's not even trying to hide it, Carter muttered as they watched Trent from the surveillance van parked a block away from his apartment. Trent's silhouette moved past the window, his routine meticulous and predictable. Or he's just living his life, Monroe replied, adjusting the focus on the camera. Not everyone is a suspect, Carter. Everyone's a suspect until proven otherwise, Carter shot back. You know that. Monroe sighed but didn't argue. Instead, she tapped a few keys on the laptop in front of her, pulling up Trent's digital footprint. Let's see if his online activity matches his offline routine. Hours passed as they monitored Trent's every move. He left his apartment at precisely 7:15 a.m., stopped by the same coffee shop for a black coffee and a plain bagel, and arrived at the agency by 8 a.m. His workday was uneventful, filled with meetings and data analysis. By 6 p.m., he was back home, where he spent the evening reading or watching documentaries. Boring, Carter muttered, rubbing his temples. If he's an alien, he's the most mundane one I've ever seen. Maybe that's the point, Monroe said, her eyes still on the screen. The best disguise is the one that doesn't draw attention. Carter frowned but didn't reply. His instincts told him there was more to Trent than met the eye, but so far, they had nothing concrete to go on. Let's dig deeper, he said finally. Financial records, travel history, anything that stands out. Monroe nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Already on it. As the hours turned into days, their investigation yielded little. Trent's life was a picture of normalcy, almost too perfect in its simplicity. But Carter couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something, a piece of the puzzle hidden just out of reach. Then, one night, everything changed. It was past midnight when Monroe's phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with an alert. She grabbed it, her eyes narrowing as she read the message. "Carter," she said, her voice tense. "We've got movement." Carter was instantly alert, his fatigue forgotten. "Where?" Monroe turned the laptop screen toward him, showing a live feed from one of their surveillance cameras. Trent was leaving his apartment, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "He's on the move," Monroe said, already grabbing her gear. "Let's go." Carter didn't need to be told twice. Within minutes, they were in the van, following Trent's car through the quiet streets. The city was a maze of shadows and streetlights, the perfect backdrop for secrets to unfold. "Where do you think he's going?" Monroe asked, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. "We're about to find out," Carter replied, his voice grim. Trent's car finally pulled into a deserted industrial park on the outskirts of the city. He parked near an old warehouse, the building's windows dark and foreboding. Carter and Monroe parked a safe distance away, watching as Trent got out and disappeared inside. "What now?" Monroe whispered. "We go in," Carter said, checking his weapon. "If he's meeting someone, we need to know who." Monroe hesitated but nodded. Together, they approached the warehouse, their footsteps silent against the gravel. The air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. Inside, the warehouse was dark, the only light coming from a single bulb hanging in the center of the room. Trent stood beneath it, his duffel bag at his feet. He seemed to be waiting for something, or someone. Carter and Monroe crouched behind a stack of crates, their eyes locked on the scene before them. Minutes passed, each one stretching into an eternity. Then, a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. A beam of light appeared, illuminating the far end of the warehouse. Carter's breath caught in his throat as a figure emerged from the shadows. It wasn't human. The figure stepped forward, its movements fluid yet unervingly precise. Its form shimmered under the dim light, as though reality itself struggled to contain it. Carter tightened his grip on his weapon, his pulse quickening. Monroe whispered, "Carter, do you see that? It's shifting." He nodded, barely breathing. The figure stood opposite Trent, its face, or what passed for one, lacking distinct features. Yet, its presence was overwhelming, radiating an alien authority that made the air feel heavier. Trent knelt, unzipping the duffel bag. From it, he retrieved a sleek, cylindrical device. Its surface pulsed with an eerie blue glow, faint patterns dancing across its surface like a living organism. He held it out toward the figure. "Protocol achieved," Trent said, his voice steady. Awaiting further directives. Carter's heart sank. "He's confirming orders," he whispered, barely audible. The figure reached out, its elongated fingers hovering over the device. The blue glow intensified, casting distorted shadows across the walls. A strange, melodic hum filled the warehouse, resonating deep in Carter's chest. Monroe nudged him. "We need to act now before they—" Before she could finish, the hum stopped abruptly. The figure's head tilted, as though it sensed their presence. Carter froze, his instincts screaming at him to move, to act, but his body betrayed him, locked in place by the alien's gaze, or lack thereof. The figure spoke, its voice a chorus of tones that defied human comprehension. Observers detected. Trent's head snapped toward their hiding spot, his expression no longer neutral but cold, calculating. "We're compromised." Carter and Monroe sprang into action, emerging from the shadows with weapons drawn. "Freeze," Carter barked. "Hands where I can see them." Trent smirked, his demeanor eerily calm. "You're too late." The alien figure raised one hand, and the air around it rippled like a heat wave. A force slammed into Carter and Monroe, sending them sprawling. Carter's weapon clattered to the ground, skidding out of reach. Monroe groaned, struggling to get up. What was that? Trent stepped closer, the device still in hand. You shouldn't have interfered. Carter, fighting through the disorientation, locked eyes with Trent. You're not walking out of here with that thing. Trent tilted his head, almost amused. Who said I need to walk? Before Carter could respond, the alien figure placed a hand on Trent's shoulder. In an instant, both of them, and the device, vanished in a blinding flash of light, leaving the warehouse eerily silent. Carter punched the ground in frustration. Damn it! Monroe pulled herself to her feet, her face pale but resolute. We need to report this. Now. Carter nodded, retrieving his weapon. And we need to figure out what that device was, and what they're planning. As they left the warehouse, a chilling realization settled over them. This wasn't just about identifying an alien agent anymore. The stakes were far higher, and the clock was ticking. As Carter and Monroe drove back to the agency in tense silence, the weight of their failure pressed down on them. The van's tires hummed against the asphalt, a monotonous sound that only served to amplify the storm of thoughts swirling in their minds. Monroe finally broke the silence. The device, whatever it is, it's the key. That's why Trent, or whatever Trent is, went to such lengths to deliver it. Carter's knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel. And now it's in their hands. We're running out of time, Monroe. If they're planning something, we're already behind. Monroe glanced at the laptop in her lap, its screen glowing faintly with intercepted surveillance feeds. We need to figure out what that thing does. I'll pull every resource we have at the agency to analyze any intel on similar devices. Maybe there's something in the archives. Carter nodded. And I'll focus on Trent. There has to be something we missed in his background, a crack in the facade. When they arrived at headquarters, Director Hayes was waiting for them in the briefing room, his face a mask of controlled anger. I don't want excuses, he snapped as they entered. What the hell happened out there? Carter squared his shoulders. Trent was working with an alien operative. They have some kind of advanced tech, a device. We tried to intervene, but they escaped. Hayes's eyes narrowed. Escaped how? Teleportation, Monroe said, her voice steady despite the absurdity of the statement. Or something like it. The alien activated the device, and they disappeared. Hayes leaned back, his expression grim. We need answers, and we need them now. Monroe, dig into that device. Coordinate with R&D and cryptography. Carter, I want a full deep dive on Trent. If he's not human, I want to know what he is and how long he's been here. Understood, they replied in unison. Over the next few days, the agency was a hive of activity. Monroe worked tirelessly with the tech teams, poring over intercepted alien communications and decrypting data fragments. Carter, meanwhile, buried himself in Trent's files, scrutinizing every detail of his life for inconsistencies. It didn't take long for Monroe to uncover something startling. She burst into Carter's office, a tablet in hand. Carter, you need to see this. He looked up from his desk, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. What is it? She placed the tablet in front of him, showing a series of schematics. The device Trent delivered, it's not just a weapon. It's a signal amplifier. If the specs are correct, it's designed to transmit a massive burst of encoded data across interstellar distances. Carter frowned. You're saying it's a beacon? Monroe nodded. Not just any beacon. It's a call for reinforcements. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. How much time do we have? Assuming they haven't activated it yet? Maybe a week, tops. But if it's already live, Monroe didn't finish the sentence. Carter stood, grabbing his jacket. Then we'd better find them before it's too late. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While reviewing Trent's financial records, Carter noticed a series of unexplained transactions, large sums transferred to an offshore account linked to a shipping company. Further investigation revealed that the company owned a remote facility on an island off the coast. That's where they'll be, Carter said, showing Monroe the map. It's isolated, secure, and far enough from civilization to operate without drawing attention. Hayes authorized an immediate strike team. This is our last chance to stop them, he said. If that beacon goes live, we're looking at an invasion. The operation commenced under the cover of darkness. Carter and Monroe led the team, their helicopter skimming low over the ocean as they approached the island. The facility's lights glowed faintly in the distance, a stark contrast to the surrounding darkness. "Remember," Carter said over the comms, "we're here to secure the device. Minimize casualties, but don't hesitate if you're engaged." As they touched down, the team moved swiftly, breaching the facility's perimeter with practiced precision. Inside, they found evidence of alien technology integrated with human systems. Monitors displaying indecipherable symbols, machines humming with an otherworldly energy. At the center of the facility, in a reinforced chamber, they found the device. It pulsed with a blinding blue light, its activation sequence already underway. Trent stood beside it, flanked by two alien figures. "You're too late," Trent said, his voice eerily calm. "The signal has already been sent." Carter raised his weapon. "Step away from the device now?" Trent shook his head. "You still don't understand, do you? This isn't an invasion. It's an evolution. Humanity's time is over." Before he could say more, Monroe fired a precision shot, hitting the control console beside the device. Sparks flew as the machinery sputtered, the blue light dimming momentarily. "Stop them!" Trent shouted, as the alien figures lunged forward. The room erupted into chaos. Carter and Monroe fought side by side, their movements synchronized as they took down the alien guards. Meanwhile, the tech team worked frantically to disable the device, their tools a blur of motion. Finally, with a loud hiss, the device powered down, its glow fading to nothing. Trent stared in disbelief, his expression turning to fury. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "They're already coming." Carter approached, his weapon trained on Trent. "Then we'll be ready." As the team secured the facility, Carter and Monroe stood outside, watching the first light of dawn break over the horizon. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, they felt a glimmer of hope. "Think we stopped it in time?" Monroe asked. Carter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out at the horizon, his expression resolute. "If we didn't, we'll make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." Together, they turned back toward the facility, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.